something happened that caught everyone off guard, especially in Washington. 10 African nations stood up, looked the most powerful country on earth straight in the eye, and said just one word: no. No to pressure, no to interference, no to the old rules of the game, and that one word? It echoed louder than any speech or summit ever could. This wasn't just some policy debate. It wasn't about aid money or diplomatic drama. This was a direct rejection of Donald Trump himself, a man who built his brand on cutting deals, commanding loyalty, and walking into rooms expecting everyone to fold. But this time, his billion-dollar offers, military partnerships, exclusive trade perks, and flashy promises were all met with something he didn't expect: cold, calculated defiance. From West to East Africa, across mineral-rich lands and farming powerhouses, these nations didn't just say no to the deals. They exposed them. They saw through the fine print, the quiet conditions, and the polite threats wrapped in the word partnership. And one by one, they walked away. So the real question is, what happened behind the scenes? And why are more countries now choosing sovereignty over submission? Let's break it down. Number 10. Ghana. This wasn't some quiet rejection behind the scenes. It echoed through the streets of Accra when the Trump administration rolled out a flashy $500 million infrastructure and aid package, pitched as a way to strengthen bilateral ties. It looked shiny on the surface. Roads, energy projects, high-tech data centers, all the right buzzwords. But Ghana didn't see a gift. They saw a trap, and they weren't afraid to say it out loud. Because hidden in the fine print were strings that went way deeper than diplomacy. Washington wasn't just offering friendship, they were asking for leverage. The deal quietly demanded Ghana to cut ties with China's Belt and Road projects, give exclusive port access in Tema and Takoradi to the U.S. Navy, and even share intelligence on Chinese and Russian activity across West Africa. That's not partnership, that's control, dressed up in a handshake. But this wasn't 1982, and Ghana wasn't desperate. Within 48 hours, insiders leaked the deal. The backlash was instant. Civil society lit up. University students hit the streets with banners that read, "We built Kwame Nkrumah's dream, not a Pentagon pipeline." Think tanks, opposition leaders, even some folks within the ruling party called it what it was: economic blackmail dressed as diplomacy. And the government? They didn't flinch. No renegotiation, no delay. Just a flat-out, unapologetic no. Then came the fire. Ghana's Ministry of Foreign Affairs dropped a bold statement reaffirming the country's non-alignment stance and its right to choose its own partners, without pressure, without permission. Public sentiment didn't just echo the government's decision, it amplified it. The protests weren't angry marches. They felt more like celebrations of self-respect. The chant, "Africa chooses Africa," wasn't just noise. It became the heartbeat of a nation. And here's the kicker: Ghana was ready for this moment. Just days after slamming the door on Washington's deal, Ghana turned up the volume on continental unity, doubling down on the African Continental Free Trade Area and locking in a fresh development deal with China. Not just aid, not just loans, but real investments in infrastructure, education, and mineral processing, on their own terms. What did Ghana lose? Maybe a few points of goodwill in D.C. But what did it gain? Its spine, and a story the whole continent is now watching. Number 9. Nigeria. If Ghana's defiance was bold, Nigeria's was seismic. See, Washington thought it held all the cards. Nigeria isn't just any country, it's Africa's giant, the most populous nation on the continent, the top oil exporter, the economic gateway to West Africa. So when Trump's team rolled out its so-called Africa Reset, Nigeria was supposed to be the prize. We're talking billions in investments, pipelines, refineries, shiny new data centers. On paper, it looked like a golden handshake, but to Abuja, it looked more like a velvet rope around its sovereignty. And Nigeria didn't flinch. It didn't stall. It stared down the most powerful country on earth and said, "Not like this." But the real kicker wasn't just in the fine print. It was in the strings attached. Buried in the deal, U.S. energy giants were set to gain majority control over half of Nigeria's key oil zones. That means profit shares, export rights, and even legal disputes would be handled on America's terms. And it didn't stop there. Nigeria was expected to walk away from BRICS energy talks and cancel its plans to refine crude oil locally under its new national development policy. Washington thought Nigeria would roll over. They assumed that poverty, corruption, and internal politics would make it an easy target. Just another client state in waiting. They were wrong. Instead, they got a live national address from President Bola Ahmed Tinubu himself. And his words were clear. This isn't partnership. This is economic recolonization in a business suit. And just like that, Nigeria flipped the script. He didn't mince words. President Tinubu accused Washington of trying to repaint exploitation as investment. And the moment he said it, the floodgates opened. Lawmakers from all sides of the aisle, ruling and opposition, backed him up. One MP summed up the national mood perfectly. "Nigeria is not a well you can rent." Then the streets spoke. In Abuja and Lagos, protests didn't erupt against America. They rose for Nigeria. Students marched, editorials lit up front pages. Talk shows went viral with one clear message: our oil is not up for negotiation. And just like Ghana, Nigeria didn't just say no, it moved on. Days later, it signed a bold new energy pact with Russia and Brazil, the South-South Sovereign Energy Pact, a game-changing deal that lets African nations not only extract but also refine and own their natural resources. Washington's response? Quiet threats, talk of sanctions. Nigeria's response? Calm, steady, unbothered. Because this time they had options, and they knew it. Number 8. South Africa. While Ghana pushed back against manipulation and Nigeria stood firm against resource grabs, South Africa drew a hard line against isolation. The Trump administration's offer was tempting. Billions in trade perks, cutting-edge surveillance tech, and next-level military training. But here's the catch. South Africa was expected to ditch BRICS, that powerful alliance with Brazil, Russia, India, and China, and fully fall in line with U.S. geopolitical interests. For South Africa, that wasn't just a deal-breaker, it was a total no-go. To South Africa, this wasn't just an insult. It was a direct challenge. BRICS isn't just a trade group. It's a statement of independence, a lifeline, and for many, a symbol of post-apartheid pride on the world stage. President Cyril Ramaphosa made it clear in a powerful address, "We won't abandon our allies for short-term favors. We're not a pawn in anyone's game. We are a sovereign nation with a global vision." His speech sparked a wave of national pride like never before. Universities held forums on African multipolarity. Activists took to the streets with BRICS solidarity marches. And the media buzzed with one clear message: Africa chooses multilateralism over manipulation. And within just a week, BRICS stepped up, opening doors with fresh investments, tech partnerships, and a landmark cultural diplomacy deal. They doubled down on supporting South Africa's development goals, offering real alternatives the U.S. never saw coming. But here's the real game changer. South Africa's move didn't isolate it. It actually connected it. More African countries started showing interest in joining BRICS or building new regional alliances that left the West's old-school influence out of the picture. What started as Trump's plan to break up BRICS only ended up making it stronger. and way more African. Number 7. Ethiopia. Ethiopia didn't respond with whispers. It answered with bold, decisive action. On the surface, Trump's offer looked like a dream deal for any country dealing with internal threats. Advanced drones, high-tech satellites, encrypted military gear, and even direct Pentagon backup against insurgents. But once Ethiopia's leaders flipped through the fine print, it didn't feel like a partnership. It read more like a silent takeover plan, with American boots, eyes, and influence planted deep in Ethiopian soil. The catch? Ethiopia had to turn itself into America's drone hub in East Africa permanently. Dig a little deeper into the fine print, and the demands were jaw-dropping. The U.S. wanted exclusive rights over key air corridors, live access to Ethiopia's entire air traffic control system, and, this one raised real alarms, the green light to run military operations on Ethiopian soil without even asking first. It wasn't a partnership. It was a quiet occupation dressed up as defense aid. But here's where it gets even more outrageous. This deal would have handed Washington remote access to surveillance feeds not just in Ethiopia, but in neighboring countries like Eritrea, Somalia, and Sudan. Basically, Ethiopia was being positioned to become the eyes, ears, and launchpad for U.S. operations all across the Horn of Africa. But Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed, he didn't blink. Standing tall in front of Parliament, he shut it down with a bold statement. "We are not a subcontractor for global policing. This is legalized espionage disguised as an alliance." Boom. Within 24 hours, the whole deal was scrapped, and it didn't end there. The country erupted, not in chaos, but in unity. Social media lit up with a powerful message. Number sign, no bases, no bosses. It was everywhere. Influencers, political analysts, university students, everyone was posting, tweeting, TikToking. The message was loud and clear. Ethiopia is not for sale. Abiy's government didn't waste a second right after shutting the door on the U.S. They flipped the script. Suddenly, a joint drone project with Turkey was moving at lightning speed. A brand new National Defense Research Fund was announced, and across the country a bold new campaign kicked off: modernize Ethiopia's air defense systems, not with foreign help, but with homegrown talent, local engineers, and brilliant diaspora scientists. Ethiopia didn't just say no to American drones. It started building its own wings. Number 6. Kenya. While Ethiopia was busy shutting the door on foreign military control, Kenya was fighting a different kind of battle. One against legal domination dressed up as development. The Trump administration had rolled out what seemed like a golden opportunity. $3 billion in funding for ports, highways, even futuristic smart cities, all under a shiny new deal called the East Africa Infrastructure Pact. For a moment, the Kenyan media was buzzing. Some even called it a Marshall Plan for the Kenyan century. But beneath the headlines, something didn't sit right. But behind the scenes, alarm bells were ringing. Legal advisors took a closer look, and what they found was shocking. Hidden deep in the fine print was a clause that would have handed over all economic disputes to U.S. courts under U.S. law. Whether it was about pricing, contracts, or labor, Kenya wouldn't have the final say. In simple terms, Kenya would lose legal control over its own infrastructure. And it didn't stop there. A second clause quietly pushed for the privatization of key national assets, but only through U.S.-approved middlemen. That meant Kenya's roads, ports, and even parts of its energy grid could have ended up in foreign hands. President William Ruto didn't wait around. He moved fast. In a nationally televised address, President Ruto stepped up to the mic and made it crystal clear. "We may borrow, but we do not mortgage our institutions. Our Constitution is not up for negotiation." His tone? Calm, measured, but unshakable. A polite but powerful number, and the country felt it. Fast. The Kenya Law Society, reform groups, business federations, they all rallied together, dropping joint declarations in support. Newspapers from Nairobi to Mombasa lit up with one headline: Modern Colonialism in Legal Form. But Kenya didn't just slam the door and walk away. It pivoted. Within weeks, the country was already moving, signing a digital infrastructure partnership with India, renewing energy and transport ties with South Korea, and locking in a $1.2 billion funding guarantee from the African Development Bank. No fine print, no hidden clauses, no political strings. You see, Kenya didn't collapse without U.S. money. It stood taller, on its own terms. Number 5. Tanzania. If Kenya drew the line in the courtroom, Tanzania drew theirs in the lab. The Trump administration came in with what looked like a massive gift: over $700 million in health aid. We're talking vaccine shipments, cutting-edge medical equipment, and plans to build high-tech biotech labs right in Dar es Salaam. On paper, it sounded like the deal of the decade. But as always, Tanzania looked deeper. But the fine print? It shocked the entire continent. In exchange for the aid, Tanzania was expected to become a primary testing ground for experimental pharmaceutical trials, straight from US and European companies. And here's the kicker. There were zero protections in place. No legal recourse if something went wrong. No accountability for injury or even death. And absolutely no rights to any of the breakthroughs Tanzania helped create. Not even a mention of intellectual property. That's when President Samia Suluhu Hassan stepped up and called it out, publicly. Standing before Parliament, she didn't mince words. We welcome science, we reject exploitation. We are not guinea pigs for your pharmaceutical laboratories. Not now, not ever. The backlash from the West came fast. Medical journals slammed her for blocking progress. NGOs accused her government of rejecting life-saving innovation. But inside Africa, it was a different story. Across the continent, her move was seen as a turning point, a bold stand for public health sovereignty. In universities and think tanks, the conversation shifted. Why is Africa always the testing ground and never the tech hub? And President Hassan didn't just walk away from the deal, she built a new path forward. Her government teamed up with the African Union's Health Strategy Center, launched a biotech innovation zone with support from Cuba, and rolled out a national grant to train the next generation of African epidemiologists and bioengineers. The message was clear: Africa doesn't need handouts. It needs a seat at the table and the tools to build its own. Number 4. Algeria. The Trump administration came knocking on Algeria's door with a flashy offer: cutting-edge security tech like AI-powered satellites, drones, and next-level predictive intelligence software. Washington was hyping it as technology like no other. Sounds like a win, right? But there was a catch. Algeria had to agree to share real-time intelligence on its neighbors, Libya, Mali, and Niger. Every military move, every economic shift, right back to Washington's playbook. To Washington, this was a smart strategic move. But to Algiers, it was nothing short of treason. President Abdelmajid Tebboune took to national TV and didn't hold back. We are not informants, we are protectors. Algeria does not trade regional peace for power. He didn't stop there. Tebboune revealed the full scope. The deal would have let the US monitor all cross-border movements and share that data with European allies, with zero Algerian oversight. The reaction? Explosive. Algeria has always fiercely protected its sovereignty, especially when it comes to intelligence. The memory of the Algerian War of Independence runs deep in the national soul. So the idea of handing over its skies and secrets to a foreign military power? It sparked protests, fired up editorials, and set off heated policy debates demanding stronger data borders. But Algeria didn't respond by shutting down or isolating itself. Instead, It doubled down and integrated. They kicked off talks with the African Union to build a pan-African cybersecurity shield, signed a defense and data cooperation deal with Russia, and fast-tracked the development of their own AI-powered surveillance systems, all fully under Algerian control. The message? Algeria wasn't saying no to intelligence, it was saying yes to owning it, reclaiming control on its own terms. Number 3. Senegal. By the time the Trump administration approached Senegal, it had already faced rejections grounded in oil, surveillance, infrastructure, and sovereignty. But this was different. This was about democracy itself. On the surface, Trump's offer was tailor-made to win favor. Millions in funding for democratic institutions, civil society support, and electoral reforms. It was framed as a gesture of goodwill to strengthen African democracy. But then things took a wild turn. A leak hit the headlines, internal memos from the U.S. State Department spilling the tea. These documents showed the aid package wasn't really about supporting democracy at all. Words like steering influence, messaging alignment, and third-party political engineering popped up everywhere. The truth? The money was less about democracy and more about manufacturing allegiance, trying to pick winners and shape politics behind the scenes. The backlash? Instant and intense. President Macky Sall's government didn't waste a second. They kicked out 2 senior U.S. diplomats, put all USAID election programs on hold, and demanded a formal apology from Washington. But what really made Senegal's response historic was how its people rallied together. Civil society groups took to the streets of Dakar, chanting loud and clear, "Our democracy, our rules." University campuses buzzed with forums and debates about foreign interference, while legal groups pushed for investigations into past foreign-funded NGOs involved in elections. Senegal wasn't just pushing back, it was standing up and taking control of its own future. But Senegal didn't just back down or fold under pressure. Instead, they went bigger. They created a brand new National Electoral Integrity Commission, an independent watchdog with oversight from the African Union, completely free from Western influence. Senegal wasn't just saying no to manipulation, it was sending a clear message to the world. Africa's democracy isn't a playground for power games anymore. And the ripple effect. Other countries started quietly rethinking how they handle foreign election funding too. Senegal made it political suicide to try this kind of interference again. Number 2. Angola. If Senegal's stand was about political independence, Angola's was all about economic self-respect. The Trump administration rolled out a shiny offer, $5 billion for infrastructure projects, roads, railways, smart power grids, and even plans for a tech innovation hub right in Luanda. On paper, it looked like a total game changer. But here's the twist buried deep in the fine print. Those investments? Not gifts or grants. They were high-interest loans tied to US-backed companies, with hardly any real ownership going to Angola. On top of that, Angola was expected to cancel all its existing trade deals with China, especially the ones involving rare earth minerals, which are huge for the economy. And if that wasn't enough, US corporations would get exclusive rights to explore Angola's vast, untapped oil fields. Suddenly, this game changer started looking a lot more complicated. President João Lourenço didn't wait for behind-the-scenes meetings. In a live press conference broadcast all across Lusophone Africa, he held the proposal up and dropped this now famous line. "If you want exclusivity, show us the money first. Don't dress debt as liberation." His words were sharp and precise. The US team couldn't come up with the financial guarantees Angola insisted on. They thought Angola's mounting debt would make them say yes, but instead, Angola just walked away. Less than 72 hours later, Angola announced a massive $3.7 billion mineral and infrastructure deal with China. And just weeks after that, they locked in a rare earths research agreement with Brazil, solidifying their spot firmly in the non-Western camp. But here's the thing, it wasn't just about swapping partners. Angola was rejecting the whole Western development playbook, the same one that's kept so many African countries stuck in debt and dependence since the 80s. For Angola, development wasn't going to come at the cost of dignity anymore. Number 1. Egypt. Egypt has been America's go-to ally in Africa for a long time, getting over $1.3 billion a year in military aid for decades. Joint military exercises, intelligence sharing, and defense deals formed the backbone of their partnership. So when the Trump administration rolled out a new security pact, Washington had big expectations. The offer? Advanced military gear, more joint exercises, and continued access to crucial intelligence spanning from the Suez Canal all the way to Libya. But there was a catch, a big one. Egypt had to openly back Israel's plan to annex the West Bank, a move that broke decades of Egypt's support for Palestine and shifted the balance in the Arab world toward Trump's Middle East agenda. The backlash inside Egypt was instant. President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi called an emergency meeting with top military brass and opposition leaders. Normally divided, they all agreed on one thing. This demand was a deal-breaker. El-Sisi didn't hold back. "We are not for sale, not in weapons, not in politics, not in blood." Those words rippled through Arabic media and lit a fire across Egypt. The protests that followed weren't against the government. They were in support of its stand, refusing to betray Palestine. Even the Arab League threw rare praise Egypt's way. And surprisingly, political rivals inside Egypt stood united behind this bold move. But Egypt wasn't done yet. Behind the scenes, it quietly sealed a military cooperation deal with China, then later locked in a naval intelligence sharing pact with Russia. The message was clear. The US could no longer take Egypt's loyalty for granted. This wasn't just about opposing annexation, it was about reclaiming agency. By saying no to the deal, Egypt drew a clear red line. No superpower gets to make it sacrifice its regional role or its core principles, especially not for cash. And honestly, that message landed way louder and stronger than any official statement ever could. So what do you think? Which country made the boldest move here? Do you feel like this is the start of a new Africa, one that can't be bought or pushed around? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Should these countries have said no from the jump? Or maybe taken the deal but played it smart, giving nothing back to Trump? Can't wait to hear what you think in the comments. Thanks for watching, and until next time, stay sharp, stay aware, and stay with us.